A pleasant good evening to our viewing and listening audience, and welcome to another session of HealthWise, a program which came about as a result of a collaboration between the St. Kitts and Nevis Medical and Dental Association and your nation station, ZIZ Television. Our aim is to bring information and education to our people on selected health topics, utilizing the appropriate resource persons who are well versed in the specific subject matter and who are also willing to volunteer their time to spread the information that will help to make us health wiser. And tonight will be no different. Our topic tonight is medical myths, as you can see. And we must obviously let people know what we are speaking about when we use the term a myth. What do we refer to as a myth when we speak in medical terms? A myth is a widely held but false belief or an idea. And we recognize that in the medical field, myths of this nature are numerous. There are a plethora of myths which we hope tonight to look at, and hopefully you, our listening audience, can have a clearer understanding as to whether or not they are fact or fiction. To help me shed some light on some of these myths, I have an esteemed panel comprising on my right of pediatrician Dr. Patrick Martin.
Good evening.
And on my left, we have internal medicine specialist Dr. Bishara Siheli.
Good evening.
And together, we will delve into this topic, and we do hope that at the very onset, because this is a participatory topic, we are hoping to hear from you, the general public, with myths which you may have in your mind that you would like to clarify. So at the very earliest possible time, you can call ZIZ with the numbers which I will announce shortly and let us know what myths you would have heard of that you would like clarified, you would like us to shed some light on. Now, to open the batting, I have decided to throw a very curved ball at Dr. Siheli in relation to a very commonly held myth in relation to medicines. Dr. Siheli, the thinking is that more is better in medicine. That is to say, you have cases where somebody gets treated for a particular condition and the medicine appears to work. So the next time they are afflicted or affected by that particular condition, or their friend or their family, they decide to double up or triple up on this medicine. Is more better, or is this a myth?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lachlan, for the opportunity to address this belief. It depends exactly what condition we're talking about. If somebody has hypertension and we start them on medication and we have good control of the hypertension, then more of the medication is not better for that person. If, however, the blood pressure is not controlled, then to bring it back down to where it needs to be, we may need to increase the medication. The same thing with diabetes. It may not be controlled with a certain amount, but we can double the dose to get better control. If you're talking about antibiotics for an infectious disease, there's usually a fixed dose we use that is routine. If it works once, then if you get the infection again, which you hope it doesn't happen, then we usually give the same course of antibiotics. If the condition doesn't improve, then we may have to change to a different course of antibiotic at that time. So it depends. Just taking antibiotics or medication without a prescription is not a good idea because it can do more harm than good.
I've actually seen some cases of people who the usual dose for Tylenol, paracetamol, is 2 tablets. And I've seen some people who determine that the headache is so severe that they're going to use 6 at one time.
Because if you take more than a certain amount of, for example, paracetamol in 24 hours, you can actually do damage to your liver, right? So that's why they always have prescribed doses to be taken at certain time. And if you exceed that threshold, you can do more harm than good. If you're never sure, always ask your doctor. Most of the time, if you buy medication over the counter, there's actually some instructions there where you should follow. And that's always, if not sure, always consult with your doctor.
Now, Dr. Martin, you have been in the business for many moons, and I'm sure, in interacting with parents of children, especially the old people, as we refer to it, you hear the saying that grinding of teeth tells you that that child has worms, and then you're going to jam them some Zentel or some other antiparasitic medication. Myth or not?
Myth. Fake news. Children grind their teeth because they have teeth. Grinding of the teeth can generate saliva, which helps not only in moisturizing the mouth, but may help to dilute concentrated liquid or a thick, solid like custard or porridge that is as thick as concrete. I mentioned the thickness because, as Dr. C. Haley said, more is not necessarily better. As a matter of fact, the difference between a medicine and a poison is the dose. We have a bottle of water here, essential for life, vital for life. Too much water, you get water toxicity. So grinding the teeth equals worm, myth.
And talking about that, I'm glad you touched on the water, because I wanted to ask Dr. Saheli, there's a theory that abounds in relation to quantity of water to be consumed. And that theory speaks to this 8 glasses of water being necessary for life. Myth or fact?
There is some truth to that. It's not a complete myth. I mean, it's a widely held belief, but okay, let's see if we can reason together here. A glass of water is what, 250 mils, 8 ounce? 4 glasses, about 2 liters. So ideally for you to maintain your hydration and to excrete the waste products, you need about 2 to 3 liters a day of fluids. How you make it up, right? It could be water, or it could either be with fruits or with juices, things like that.
I think the myth that abounds really, lots of people think that it must be 8 glasses of water, and they're not counting the soups and the teas and the other things that they're using. So ultimately,
fluid should be at least 2. However, this is what's recommended in a temperate climate where not many people are sweating. And if you're sweating or exercising, you may need more than the 2 liters of fluids a day. So again, a rule of thumb is look at your urine. If it's very concentrated, it's dark yellow and you're not taking any vitamins, that's a sign you need to drink more water. And if you're dehydrated, it's going to affect other aspects of your body. You may get a head fog, you may feel lethargic, muscle cramps, and that may be a sign you also may need to drink more fluids. But again, our body, when it's thirsty, it guides us there. And it's basically tells you have a kind of a water deficit, so you should drink more. So follow your body's guidance. Your urine is your dashboard. Look at the color and how you feel, and if you feel great, then you're on the right path.
Yeah, well, I think we're doing good so far with our myths. Dr. Martin, there's this term that you have inward fever, and it seems to be quite frequently used here in our beloved federation. Is there something called inward fever? Can you have a fever inside and no fever outside? Is that myth, or is there any fact to that?
Fever or elevated temperature is your body going into high gear to work on the invasion of a germ. mostly viruses or bacteria, the heat that is generated is transmitted via the bloodstream. So it's in your body. I suspect this inward descriptor came from a smart doctor who was trying to teach using fear. As if to say, the fever is now inward, as in the deep recesses of your body.
Some damage inside.
Yeah. I'm happy that you invite me to this program because of some of these, because of the myths and the fake news, people make decisions that are unnecessary, unhealthy, and expensive, and decisions based on fear. And we have to be frank. The profession is part of that fear-mongering. So inward fever, that does not exist in the classical texts of medicine. Fever is fever, elevated body temperature.
If that were to be the case, I guess those corona testers who have those automatic temperature gauges will have to go inside to find this fever, perhaps.
If there's inward fever, then there has to be an outward fever, because opposites have to exist.
Exactly. All right.
And so it's good to question persons like ourselves with titles who appear to be bright. It's important to question us. When you question us, watch our reaction. If our reaction appears to be defensive, we are trying a fast one.
Interject. I mean, I'm not sure where the origin of that term inward fever came from. Either. I'm just thinking, like, okay, the medical term for elevated temperature is hypothermia. So the origin could be inwards from your body trying to fight off infection, whether by bacteria or virus, or it could be due to like heat stroke. When you're outside and you're like standing at attention, dehydrated, and your temperature goes up, and you develop a fever from outward. So I'm just trying to rationalize where the inward is from bacteria, outward is heat stroke.
Yes, what is strange, I really never heard the term outside of the Caribbean before. I never heard it, so I put it down to local or regional myth. Have you heard it outside, Patrick?
No, Caribbean people are very versatile with the English language.
Okay, let's move on to another myth. You often hear people say, Doc, I have cholesterol, and using it in the negative sense, the thinking being that you have cholesterol, so therefore cholesterol is something bad. Break that down for me. Break that down.
Well, we all have cholesterol. Without cholesterol, we wouldn't be here. Cholesterol is part of the building block of our cells, and it's used to make a lot of the hormones, the sex hormones, the stress hormones. So, yes, you do have cholesterol. Where we're concerned is there are two types of cholesterol in our body. One is good, and one is bad. When we have high levels of the bad cholesterol, it deposits within our body in the lining of our vessels, and they cause blockages, which can, if they rupture, these are like plaques, if that cholesterol becomes high enough and rupture, it can block the artery and cause strokes, heart attack, poor circulation, and affect your nature and so on. And if you have the good cholesterol high, it's like Drano, it cleans it out to make sure you don't have this blockage. So we have cholesterol, we want the good cholesterol to clean our arteries to be high, and we want the bad cholesterol to be low.
Gives a pretty decent explanation. So now people would stop using the term cholesterol only in a negative sense, understanding that cholesterol is an important component of the body and is needed for certain bodily functions.
However, I think it's a very good point, because if you watch certain channels, commercial TV channels, they'll give you the impression that all cholesterol is bad. And then you'll hear all cholesterol is bad, and then here's a drug to fix it. Now this part, in public health we call that predatory marketing. You create a fear, and then you offer people a so-called cure, and then you put an 800 number, and wait 6 to 8 weeks for delivery. In that 6 to 8 weeks, your credit card is being debited, and people are using that.
Okay, we're going to take a short break for station identification at this time, 8:45, but when we come back, we will continue our very interesting discussion on a variety of medical myths, and it is our hope that those in our listening audience and viewing audience who may have interesting myths to call in and express those myths, get them clarified, educate us, inform us about those myths, and we can see if we can add value to them or dispel them in total. So we will be right back after your station identification.
Dr. Blake's General Dentistry and Orthodontics, located on South Independence Square Street in Basse-Terre, is the place to discover that perfect smile you have always dreamt of. With convenient hours to serve you, Dr. Blake's Dental assures the best preventative and restorative care to guarantee the health and beauty of your smile. Call 466-7622 for your appointments.
Welcome back to HealthWise, a program organized by the St. Kitts and Nevis Medical and Dental Association in collaboration with your nation station, ZIZ Television. We are tonight talking about various medical myths, some which you will hear from us tonight, and some which we hope you will call in and let us know what you would have heard about. The numbers to call are 466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765, and the overseas line, it's 1-239-645-4500. So you can call and let us know what myths do you know that you would like us to shed some light on, or even inform us and educate us about, because we do not have all of the myths that are round and about in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. So call us and let us know. Dr. Martin, one commonly held myth amongst especially younger mothers and their male boy children is that if you cut their hair too early, they will not speak. But I'm thinking back to my days when I was a kid. You know, I think I had a haircut from day one, and I think I'm speaking up to now. So can you shed some light? Is that something new? Is it mythical? Is it real? Is there any fact or fiction in that?
That's a myth. children learn to talk by what they H-E-A-R, not H-A-I-R. I don't know where the mix-up originated, but it has led to parents leaving their boys here ungroomed for months, which can lead to poor scalp hygiene, the development of fungal infections, because some fungi just love dead hair. Sorry, dead scalp skin, dead scalp cells. And so by not practicing good scalp hygiene, because of this plaiting of the boys here and keeping it plaited into eternity, that leads to two problems, possible problems. The plaiting of the hair, the braiding of the hair, is a tugging effect on the hair root that causes bleeding in the scalp. And if the bleeding is extensive enough, the bacteria especially love that blood dead cells. And then you start getting scalp infections and the lymph nodes popping up. And I tell you, when some parents see those lymph nodes pop up in the neck, what we call cannons, it really scares them. So no, it has talking has nothing to do with H-A-I-R. It has everything to do with H-E-A-R.
Well, I don't think you could have made it more clearer than you did, and I must admit that it's only in more recent times, that is in the last 10, 20, perhaps 30 years, that I've heard of that phenomenon, because when we grew up many moons ago, I don't think we had children walking around or being carried around with long hair waiting until they spoke to get there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think it happened back then, so it's probably a new phenomenon. So Dr. Siheli, let's look at another mythical practice that occurs, and I've noticed it only here in St. Kitts. Perhaps you might have seen it in Jamaica, the nutmeg under the tongue in relation to strokes. I was flabbergasted when I encountered that phenomenon, because I'd never heard of it before. And when I asked, I was now trying to be the learner from the patient and the family as to what's the significance of the nutmeg under the tongue in cases of strokes. And I couldn't really get an answer that made a lot of sense to me. Can you shed some light on this?
I hope I can shed some light. I've actually seen it practiced in Jamaica, where I was trained, and even here, and the other islands actually practice it too. So I've tried to find out the mechanism to understand whether there's some special chemical that kind of dissolves the clot or opens up the artery. I couldn't find anything. But from our experience, we've actually had several patients who didn't die from the stroke, but die from aspirating, swallowing down the tube that goes into the lung, the nutmeg itself. Because if you have a stroke, a lot of people lose the ability to swallow and have weakness of the muscles. And by putting the nutmeg in the mouth, you're actually increasing your risk of choking on the nutmeg. So it's a practice I would not advise to be practiced, because it can do more harm than good. I've seen some other places they have these nutmeg spray. So if you want to find out if this home wife therapy, what you call this tradition, has some merit, and without the risk of choking, then try to get the nutmeg spray and put it under your mouth. I'm trying to rationalize. There's always some truth in these practices. Why is it widely believed? If it did more harm than good, you'd think it would have been shut down. The fact that it still persists and it's widespread, maybe some truth, but I wouldn't advise it.
Yeah, Dr. Martin, back to you. In relation to expiry dates, I forgot outside in my vehicle to bring with me, I had a cough mixture which expires on the 30th of November 2020. And the thinking is amongst many people that on the 2nd of December it is no good. What say you?
An expiry date is to protect the manufacturer from liability. These are all medications are chemical substances. All. And again, the difference between benefit and poison is the dose. Some chemical substances disintegrate over time. And so the manufacturer, having done experiments, has figured that by the 32nd of December, your cough and cold medication would have disintegrated to a point where the active ingredients are no longer active. And that the active ingredient may have been converted by exposure to light, and saliva may have converted into something else, which makes it a poison. So an expiry date is guidance. That being said, I mean, for example, creams, ointments, they can be used beyond the expiry date, but a professional will not prescribe you. A pharmacist will not dispense anything that is expired. That is, a bona fide pharmacist will not. Having said that, I mean, I have an antibiotic cream that I bought in 1992. I'm still using it.
Right, Dr. Siheli, there's a myth that I got from international sources in relation to brain power, stating that human beings only use 10% of their brain power. 10%. 10% to me seems pretty small, for so many functions that we perform. Is that myth, or is that?
Well, I use my brain 100% of the time. I don't know where that myth came from. I think they attributed it to Einstein. He said we're only using about 10% of our brain. I mean, we have the potential to develop it more to 100%. I mean, the context, I mean, we could all do better, yes. But I think we're using the 100% capacity of our brain, not all the time, but at some time. I mean, Dr. Martin, anything?
I'd say, we have a God-given operating system. It's working all the time.
That would be my thinking as well. There's so many different things going on apart from us speaking.
If you want to tell some people, sorry to cut you off, if you want to tell some people that my race is superior to your race, then you'll tell those persons that they're only using 10% of their brain. And I think that has happened in our history.
Okay, so that might obviously be one of the sources of that international.
That's a racist phenomenon. It just popped into my mind.
It's possible.
And while you're on that subject, Dr. Martin, here in St. Kitts and perhaps in some of the other islands, the mythical thinking is that we catch cold from rain. You go out in the rain and you catch cold. Any fact to that?
That's a myth. If we caught a cold is a virus infection, classically. Okay? But if we caught a cold by getting wet from rain, we'll get a cold every time we bathe. The issue is that when the body gets chilled, if there's rain, wind, the body temperature can drop, and viruses love that. But, this myth has caused some people to dash, slip, and fall. from rain. And there's the unfortunate tragedy that happened at Brimstone Hill. I forgot what year it was, 60s, when there was a dance there, and shower of rain, people dashed. Christina, shower of rain, people dashed. So it's a myth that you will catch a cold by getting wet. If you get wet, dry immediately so that your body does not become chilled.
Okay, well, that does put some clarity on that particular myth, which really and truly you hear it almost every day here in St. Kitts, and you do see people scampering to get out of the rain, only of course to suffer some other ill consequence.
The scamper is to protect the $1,000 hairdo
and the dye that is contained therein. Well, we're going to take another break for station identification. At this time, our collaborator, ZIZ, would like to, of course, identify itself with its sponsors, and we will be right back. But we are at present entertaining any calls from anywhere.
There's a myth there.
I see that myth on the screen, that has promoted me to the post as surgeon.
Demoted, may have been demoted. They're not promoted, demoted.
We will be right back after station identification, and hopefully with your calls, queries, questions, and your myths.
Dr. Blake's General Dentistry and Orthodontics, located on South Independence Square Street in Basseterre, is the place to discover that perfect smile you have always dreamt of. With convenient hours to serve you, Dr. Blake's Dental assures the best preventative and restorative care to guarantee the health and beauty of your smile. Call 466-7622 for your appointments.
Welcome back to HealthWise, and we were just having a little chuckle here about some of the myths that we would have heard, some of which probably would not be good for public consumption. Nonetheless, they are myths, and we have definitely determined, that they will remain in the realm of myth. Now, Dr. Martin, there's the commonly held mythical belief that drinking milk makes the bones stronger. What say you?
Fake news. Myth. We have been brought up to believe that milk is the only source of calcium. Calcium is a mineral that is needed for strong bones, but so is phosphorus. And you can throw in some sodium and potassium in there also. The truth is that all the minerals come out of the soil. The minerals are picked up by the roots of plants and trees. And so we eat plants, we eat the ground provisions, we eat the fruits. And so from having a variety, we get enough calcium Persons who do not drink milk have normal calcium levels if they are eating a variety of fruits and vegetables. Vitamin D is absolutely crucial for the body's processing of calcium. We get vitamin D by just sticking our hands outside the window and our 24/7 sunlight literally shining in our skin. One more thing about milk. Persons of West African descent, I can't disaggregate in terms of which tribal groups, but persons of West African descent are known to be lactase deficient. Lactase is the enzyme that digests the milk sugar called lactose. And so this programming that came through the colonial era that you must drink milk has led to persons getting a bad feeling in the morning. And that's the bloating from our ability to digest the milk sugar. And if we continue using the milk, cow's milk that is, then diarrhea and even bleeding from the rectum. Up comes soy milk in the 1990s. But unfortunately, there's some cross-reactivity. About 30% of persons who have a cow's milk intolerance will also have a problem with soy milk. Up comes almond milk in the 21st century. I'm waiting for the experience. I have no experience with almond milk. Just ask yourself what was done in a factory to convert almond, solid almond, into a milk. The more processing, the more likely we are to have a complication. So calcium out of the soil, provisions, fish, vitamin D, sunlight shining on our skins. We have all these ingredients here. We do not have to import milk. We do not have to drink milk.
Thank you. What Dr. Martin said, I agree with what he said. It's not the milk per se that is actually creating strong bones and so on. They've actually done studies looking at the consumption of milk in nations and look at which nations consume more and see if there's a relationship between stronger bones, less osteoporosis and fracture. It's actually opposite. The more milk cow's milk you consume, the more fractures, the more osteoporosis. And the reason why is they find that the casein, the protein in milk, when it's metabolized, it creates a low-grade acidosis, right? So you produce a little bit more acid than if you eat plant proteins. You get what's called an alkalosis. Now, what is acidosis? If you get chalk and you put acid on it, it's going to melt it, cause it to break down, acid and calcium carbonate. So if you have a low-grade acidosis from drinking milk, it's going to cause you to lose bone strength. So you can get the calcium, the phosphate from the soil. All fruits and all vegetables has a certain amount of calcium. And the cows that create milk, they're all vegans. They all eat grass. So you can get everything from the soil. What actually strengthens the bone is weight-bearing exercise. Number one thing that strengthens it. So exercising, regularly not sleeping on a couch, getting out, sunlight, the vitamin D. You can get your vitamin D, you get your calcium from your food, and the weight-bearing helps. Okay? So go back to the soil.
Yeah. Can we segue and say that there is some research showing the value of vitamin D in relation to strengthening our bodies against coronavirus?
Right. So vitamin D is a critical vitamin that not only works at the level of the bone, but at the level of the kidneys and also at the level of the immune system. And they find that there's a group of chemicals, we call it cathepsins, that detect viruses and bacteria. When they go into the cell, they go and they cut them up and prevent them from spreading. So once your vitamin D level is actually low, they find they have more severe complications developing the severe lung disease. And those who have normal levels have a stronger immune system and is able to flatten the curve of the virus entering into the body and causing havoc. So another reason to exercise, eat healthily, and go outside. Everything is already made for us. We just take it for granted in our beloved country of sunlight, sea, and
of course, the sunshine and the sea bathing, they're still VAT-free. So it's imperative that we take advantage of this, because who knows, if things continue to go on with Corona, we may have to look for new sources of income, and who knows if there might not be a VAT on sunshine from somewhere up north, being sent down to us.
The milk, before I forget. We are the only species that continue to drink milk after we've been weaned off breastfeeding, and we drink another species' milk. So it doesn't seem natural. And as Dr. Martin said, those of West African descent, we weren't made to digest the lactose. It is those Caucasians up north who didn't have advantage of having the sunlight. They had a mutation that allowed them to continue, for survival's sake, to digest lactose.
If you read the history of the food industry in the so-called developed countries, you will see wherever they produce an abundance of a product, they begin to market it so they can make money off of it.
Okay, let's look at what a term that is loosely used here in St. Kitts, Dr. C. Haley. You hear people speak about high blood. I have high blood. They don't say high blood what? They just say high blood, so therefore I can't drink malt. Put some light on that so that people have a clear understanding what the possibilities are here in relation to high blood, whether it be high blood pressure, high blood count, and the use of drinks like malt.
Okay, I've heard low blood, I've heard high blood. Sometimes I have to ask for clarification. Are you talking about high blood pressure, high blood sugar? And when you talk about low blood, are you talking about low blood pressure or low blood anemia? Right. With the belief that malt helps bring up the blood, I usually hear it in terms of anemia when they talk about low blood. And I guess because malt has lots of vitamins, right, vitamin B12, they think it would help to bring up their anemia. With regards to diabetes, right, that can cause the high blood sugar. So I wouldn't recommend it in that case. If you have anemia or low blood, I would recommend you eat lots of greens, beans, beets to bring it up. For me, again, a lot of this thing is marketing. As Dr. Martin would say, it's a sugary processed beverage which says it's high in vitamins, but you can get your vitamins from fruits and vegetables if you eat a well-balanced meal.
But as far as the high blood pressure component is concerned, I still think that there's some people who think if they have high blood pressure, the malt will make it worse. As opposed to, in the case of the anemia, understandably, the thinking is the vitamins and so on, yeah. But in the case of high blood pressure, for whatever reason, because it's a nourishing drink, people think that it somehow will send your blood pressure through the roof.
I'm not sure where that thinking came from, because you probably think it's an energy drink. If your pressure is high, it's going to make it higher.
I don't think I've observed had any reports of people's pressure going higher with the use of the malt. You may have the benefits, as you clearly underlined, by virtue of the vitamin content of the malt that may be helpful in treating the anemic states. But in relation to high blood pressure, I don't think we have any significant or known impact on your blood pressure. But we have other reasons to recommend not using the malt, the large sugary. Yeah.
Okay.
I wonder, I do ask people when I hear these things, I try to quiz them. I said, what if the malt came from the United States? Would you still think the same way? And I get a different look. It seems as though only local products make things worse. We have a lot of work to do. Our profession still has a lot of work to do to, I was going to say reprogram, to get some of these myths out of the way because of this belief that local is inferior. That's still permeating our society in 2021.
Okay, we're gonna have our last station identification break at this time, and we're still looking for calls for those who may have any myths, any questions in relation to myths which we have discussed so far. You can call us at 466-2666. That's the local landline number. You also have some cell phone options at 662-8674, and you have 767-4765. You also have an overseas number, 1-239-645-4500. And so after a brief break for station identification, we will be right back.
Dr. Blake's General Dentistry and Orthodontics, located on South Independence Square Street in Basseterre, is the place to discover that perfect smile you have always dreamt of. With convenient hours to serve you, Dr. Blake's Dental assures the best preventative and restorative care to guarantee the health and beauty of your smile. Call 466-7622 for your appointments.
Okay, welcome back to HealthWise, and we want to ask those callers who were trying to get in during the break that they can call now. We are right back, and we are raring to go with whatever your myths may be. We are willing to clarify, to add to, subtract, or demystify these myths as we go through them one by one. Dr. Martin, are vaccines only for children, as some people think?
No.
Why is this so?
For example, here we have hepatitis B vaccine. Somebody gets a needle stick, an adult gets a needle stick, we recommend that. So the vaccines are made, you cut the cloth to suit the garment, right? So vaccines, you typically associate vaccines with children because a lot of diseases used to be devastating to children. And now there are, over 20 vaccines available which have cut childhood deaths down to a minimum in this country and other countries in the Caribbean. So no, vaccines are not made only for children.
Any comment, Dr. Saheli, on that? Because I would assume things like the HPV, which they're trying to introduce right now, has probably started. That's not exactly children per se, but into older age groups. You have I see advertised.
That vaccines are for children only. That's the first time I've heard.
Yeah, but that's one of the mythical things around. And I know that shingles vaccine I see being advertised on US television.
Which you get every 10 years to protect you against tetanus. You have the influenza vaccine, which you give to those who are elderly at risk for influenza. There's a pneumococcal vaccine to protect against pneumonia, which you give to adults. So there's, as Dr. Martin correctly said, most of the diseases initially were in children, and you had high child mortality there, and that has cut it dramatically then.
We are a nation of people. We love to eat. We all love to eat, and we love to eat plenty. The thinking is based upon a myth that perpetuates our societies, that when you eat late at night, you're going to be fat. Any truth in that? Any truth?
There is some truth to that. Right. Most of your meal is at night, right? So there's a kind of imbalance between your metabolism and your food intake. There's a saying, which is, they've actually validated: eat breakfast like a king or queen, eat lunch like a prince or princess, and eat dinner like a pauper. You're most active in the morning, and that's when you need your most energy. Lunch is like a top-up for the rest of the afternoon, and dinner should be your smallest meal. A lot of people would skip breakfast trying to lose weight, but what would happen is that your metabolism would slow down, you become sluggish during the day, and then your hunger pangs would build up, and then when you go home, you overeat and you overcompensate, right? And then you go to sleep. So if you eat the biggest meal in the morning, then the energy goes from your hand, from your plate, to your muscles, to your brain, to keep everything going. If you don't have a breakfast, so it's your small meal, but your biggest meal is the dinner, this is when you're less active before you go to sleep. The calories you eat when you digest will go from your body into your fat. Okay? Also, if you do most of the digestion, you eat and you lie down after that, you increase risk of acid reflux. Some people, they don't sleep well because they get burning in their chest, funny taste in their mouth. This can also affect your sinuses, so you start to snore. And then once you put on weight, you increase the risk of sleep apnea and other complications. So eating late can increase acid reflux, can increase indigestion, can increase weight gain and all the other complications. So you want to match your caloric intake with your caloric output. And you're most active in the morning, so your biggest meal should be best given in the morning.
The original statement was that Kittians and Nevisians love to eat. This has to be examined very carefully, because there has been manipulation of our food supply with the introduction of refined sugars, polyunsaturated fats, and also heavily saturated fats that add flavor to some of the products. Then colors, and finally the processed food have a low amount or zero fiber. So for example, a child will be eating. As the child swallows, the food goes into the stomach. The food is not expanding as it would if the child was eating vegetables, and so they don't feel full and just keep eating. I don't know if I made that point. Because they're eating food that is processed and denatured, it takes an hour of intake to feel full, whereas if you're eating fresh local food, you feel full in about 5 minutes. And the other point to that is of the love to eat is that the denatured processed food causes your brain to do a reset, and so you're eating every 2 hours. The yo-yo diet. Right. Whereas the local healthy food, you get a slower rise in your blood sugar, and you can go 4 to 6 hours without getting hungry. So it has been my experience and learning from the population that this, children like to eat thing is actually a reflection of the manipulation of the food supply.
Add to that. So not only you have a mismatch in terms of the timing when you eat, but you have a mismatch in the composition. So as you correctly said, we have lots of unprocessed food and sugary beverages that are high caloric dense, toxic rich, but nutrient poor. And the fiber and the water content that makes you feel full is not there. So you overeat to get that full feeling. Because it's processed, the absorption is very quickly, and it doesn't match the hormone that comes in to allow your body to absorb it properly. So your body gets filled very quickly in terms of the sugar, but not the satiety as we call it, and then it crashes while your insulin is going up, so you feel hungry every 2 minutes. So your body is kind of addicted to this thing. So it comes back to matching your needs with your intake, right? So it should be high fiber, high water, not calorie dense, but nutrient dense and toxic, but without the preservatives, without the artificial ingredients, because they make the food very addictive. The second point that makes us overeat, and I agree with Dr. Martin, is that it's high salt, high sugar, high fat. Our taste buds weren't made for that. So when you take these super stimulatory substances, your taste buds down-regulate to try to maintain the balance. So the normal stimulation you get from fruits and vegetable and water, it's the body is desensitized, it doesn't get it at all. So you need the constant fix with the sugar, the high salt, the high fat to enjoy the food. Now it's interesting, if you come off all of these preservatives, these processed stuff, what happens, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks before your taste buds upregulate, and then you start to enjoy the fruit, the vegetables, the water, which is the healthy stuff. So a lot of it is marketing, and this is not by accident, right? I just say, FTM, follow the money. Cui bono, who benefits from our people loving to eat and eating much? Why is it there's so much emphasis on fast food rather than slow food, in which we take our time to sit down with family and digest the food, which is better for our health? So, I mean, this is a big issue which should be taken up at higher levels and be ingrained in our policies.
Let me just focus on our eyesight with two mythical statements that are heard frequently. Eating carrots is good for your eyesight, and reading in dim light can ruin your vision, your eyesight. Taken together, Dr. Sahel.
Okay, the first one is eating carrots. Okay, it has vitamin A, right? So yeah, we know it helps. Not to my knowledge. I mean, I sometimes preach that. I mean, eat a carrot.
Eat too many carrots, the skin turn orange.
that also, I've seen that.
That's just cosmetic, but it's healthy. But interestingly, taking excess vitamin A can do more harm than good. Right, so your body, if you eat plants, whole food, plant-based diet, your body takes what it needs and expels what it doesn't. Once you take synthetic stuff, you can overdose. As Dr. Martin said, just like anything in excess which is good for you can become bad for you. So nature has packaged everything properly. And that the other question about
eat reading in dim light can cause your vision to go bad. There's that thinking around,
you have to strain your eyes, you can get headaches, vision bad. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
I don't think.
we'll get back to those, because you hear that statement.
That's correct, because the vision, there are muscles involved in visual accuracy. And if those muscles are strained, just like if you strain a muscle during football, cricket, or lifting weights, the muscle begin to disintegrate. Right? So that is not a myth.
Okay, these are myths. Yeah, that if a person eats small seeds from fruits, those seeds would grow in the stomach. Any takers on that one?
I don't know where that came from. I don't know. No. That's obviously a myth. That's obviously false.
He just made up that one.
Okay. That's a Latin myth.
Children are full of eating tomatoes unless the seeds have been removed because of that fear. The seeds gonna grow in them. So this specifically refers more to tomatoes, but perhaps to other fruits, perhaps.
Well, we have to be careful about seeds in relation to small children, because it poses a choking hazard. As a matter of fact, it's child abuse to give nuts and those things to infants and toddlers. You really have to wait until the child is more north of 3-4 years old before you offer those things. Any seedless tomatoes should be avoided. They have been manipulated. Seedless grapes, avoid those things. They have been manipulated. As a matter of fact, it has been shown that seedless grapes have very little fiber. It's all sugar.
In adults, only one condition I know of in which we recommend you don't eat any like nuts with seed is diverticulosis. These are like little potholes in your gut, and this can block them up and cause inflammation. So with seeds and nuts, that's the only condition an adult patient I know we would advise not to eat.
Okay, in relation to men especially who always have this concern, with to me sounds very mythical, catching an STD by using a public restroom.
That's totally mythical there. STD is a sexually transmitted disease, so you have to have an exchange of bodily fluids.
Even using the toilet, you won't catch it from using the toilet, because I think that is linked to the use of the toilet.
HIV and so on, but not to my knowledge. And there's no scientific evidence that suggests you can pick it up.
Dr. Martin, supplements. The thinking is that if you don't use supplements, you won't thrive. Your children won't thrive. You need supplements, and supplements are available in wide variety, so many different names. Supplements are almost named by the body part that it's targeting. So for stronger ears, you'll have supplements. For better right hand, for better feet, you have diabetic formula for diabetics. What's your comment on?
It's all marketing. Our people don't need to be supplemented. We are a strong race of people. This is all marketing. If your gas tank is full, you can't supplement it. It's going to run over. So just eat a healthy diet, get your exercise, you'll be all right. As a matter of fact, the supplements can spill over into poisoning, because more is not better. And some people are making supplements in their mother's kitchen or garage, putting them in a bottle, putting them on the internet, 1-800, some fancy advertising, and our people get sucked into that. So we have to protect our people, because people think that there's some shortcut to good health, that there's some magic potion or magic doctor to good health. And good health is a combination of factors. Having a doctor being only 20%. It's good food, beverages, air, where you live, who you're having sex with, smoking or not smoking. And so, but the supplement industry is making a mint out of our people.
To just segue on something Dr. Martin said, we have this impression here, which is a myth, that anything foreign is better. I remember when I came back, I did a presentation at our CME at JNF on health and how vegetables, fruits, ground provision is actually healthier. Dr. Martin stood up and he tried to explain this I call it fascinoma. He said you have to look back at our history. There's some stigma in eating local food here. And as a developing country, if you're not able to go to the supermarket and buy the foreign stuff, then you haven't arrived. But it bothered me, because the healthier ones are the ground provision. But it's stigmatized, because we think it's for poor people. And it's what is good and healthy is closer to, I would say, God's factory, which is the soil, rather than to man's factory, which is the supermarket. And people are willing to pay more. Again, more is better. More for imported stuff, ultra-processed stuff, things like that, less nutritious, things that have more toxins than our produce that can be produced locally in our Liamiga fertile soil. I mean, it's a mindset which we need to get over. Don't think we need the supplements. We just need to supplement our life and diet with healthy ground food. ITAL is vital.
Now, Dr. Martin, the thinking in relation to vaccines and things like vaccines can cause the flu, vaccines can cause autism, so therefore you have lots of debate surrounding that mythical statement about all the different things that vaccine can cause. Any comment on that myth?
The vaccine and autism story was made up. Somebody put out some research. The research was faulty. The research, unfortunately, was published in a renowned journal. That has since been retracted, but the damage has already been done. It was linked to a constituent of the vaccine called a mercury-based, I forgot, thimerosal. When that was removed, autism rates did not drop. In St. Kitts and Nevis, we have one case of autism spectrum disorder for every 55, 60 children born. Our rates of autism are similar to those in North America. Vaccines giving you colds? That's a myth. Once again, vaccine technology. Vaccine technology was brought to this hemisphere from Africa. A so-called slave by the name of Onesimus, Onesimus, you can Google that, showed persons in Boston some scarring he had on his shoulder, which protected him from smallpox, while there was a smallpox epidemic in Boston, Massachusetts in 1656, something like that. So this thing about white people poisoning, that is fake news. Matter of fact, the font of all knowledge is Africa, but because some Europeans found that difficult to swallow, they call Africa the dark continent. Fake news is not new.
Well, since we are looking at issues in relation to children, you would have definitely encountered cases where when a child has a fever and the decision is made to use a bath using Creolin to treat the fever. Is this a mythical thought, or is there some science?
A dangerous practice. I think our profession is part of that.
Yeah, let's take a break and welcome this caller. Good evening, caller. You're with us? Good evening, caller. Are we're not hearing anything at this time, so we probably would have lost that one. But as we were addressing the creolene issue, for fevers.
So you can imagine middle of the night, child temperature goes up.
Yeah, let's take the caller. Good evening, caller. You're on. Good evening. We are not. Yes. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm just asking, what do you think, what is your take on the introduction of the COVID vaccine in the Federation, if it to come?
We will try and make some comments on that one. Tonight we're trying to look at medical myths, all right? But before the program is ended, we will definitely have a little...
because I heard you all speaking about other vaccines, like the flu vaccines and stuff, so that's why I put in my 10 cents.
Yes, I will definitely solicit some comments from both panelists to look at their thoughts in relation to the impending vaccine that is being touted from various sources. So thanks much for your call, and thanks much for looking at the program, and hopefully you're enjoying it.
Thank you, Dr. O'Loughlin.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're completing the creolene thought.
So it's the middle of the night, child's temperature goes up, child is irritable. What do? A shower? If you have to shower every half an hour to make them comfortable, fine.
Does that shower have to involve ice?
No. So that's a very good point. So naturally, you want to bring the temperature, you feel like you want to bring the temperature down, but the body is actually doing something good. It's just that if the temperature goes too high, the child or the adult feels uncomfortable. So it's not necessary to try to bring it back down to 0, because it might overshoot and go to 96 and get cold, right? So normal body temperature is 97, 100. It can go up to 100.5 on a hot day. Right. So the thing is to make the child or adult comfortable. The person who's treating cannot get rid of the fever. That is regulated by the body and its internal thermostat, which is located in the brain. When the body finishes doing what it has to do, the fever will abate. So a doctor does not cure fever. It's your body that cures the fever. That is the body that takes care of the infection, and then the fever goes away.
Dr. Saheli, the myth that is being perpetuated about ulcers being caused by spicy foods and stress. Is that myth? Is it half myth, or it is no myth at all?
Okay. There's something called stress ulcers, so that's not a myth. When you're stressed out, your body may overproduce the acid in your stomach, may also suppress your immune system, so a bacteria called Helicobacter pylori can actually grow. So stress can contribute and also you produce a hormone called cortisol that can also cause ulcers to appear. It's not that spices causes ulcers. I mean, it's just probably you have an ulcer and the spice just aggravates it in that case.
One common thing, and I want
Spices have been found to be useful in overall healthy diet in the management of COVID.
One myth here that I'll probably solicit the comment from both of you all, because I've heard it, throughout the length and breadth of St. Kitts in relation to gas, and gas being in almost every body part that I know of. And I'm sure you both would have probably encountered that phenomenon. Gas in my leg, and I've actually had situations where one client demonstrated by rubbing the leg and belching and showing, you see, I have gas in my leg. And it's difficult to dispel a myth of that nature. Dr. Saheli, you take first shot.
Sometimes it makes me laugh when I hear these complaints that they have gas in their leg, gas in their head. The only complaint I take very seriously and don't laugh is when they complain of gas in the chest, because gas in the chest could be a sign of a heart attack. And a lot of people would come and say, okay, well, I had gas in my chest last night and I took some Deca and I went to sleep, instead of coming to the hospital. And they came 24 hours and they were having a massive heart attack. And he said, by the grace of God, they're still alive. How this connection came about, I'm not sure, but they may seem not as serious if they complain of gas in the chest. So I asked for clarification. What do you mean? And try to deal with the symptom itself.
Any comments, Dr. Hoffman? I don't know if it's in pediatrics.
What I've found out, but you've been practicing for 40 years longer than I am. What I found out is because gas makes a big noise, it is equated to a big problem. When it comes up as a belch, it makes, you'll hear parents say that the child belched like a big man. And so to them that signifies a big problem. Or when the air comes out the other end, which we call flatus, that had to be too big for a child, and so there must be something going on. And so you really have to take time and draw or show pictures of the human body that illustrate that gas is normal in the alimentary canal, which runs from your mouth to your anus, keeps it open.
But when you have persons thinking that you can have gas in your toe and in your fingers and in your leg,
I think we are responsible for that myth. You want to give the person an explanation for their malady, it was just a gas. I'm not dismissing colleagues. I'm not trying to be holier than thou, but that is what has been represented to me. That a quickie explanation is that you have gas.
They have a discomfort. Like when you're full of gas, you have a discomfort in your stomach. And then when you belch and you pass gas below, the pain goes away. So maybe they think it's the mechanism is the same, right? But as my gastroenterologist professor would say, let wind go free. Don't keep it hostage. So
something warm, because air rises with heat, you will belch. And so drinking something hot in the morning has become linked to getting gas off your stomach. When we already live in a hot country, and so drinking something hot just makes you hotter and sweat. You could imagine the look of mortification on the faces of some people. You tell them, hey, you could drink a cool beverage in the morning. You live in a tropical climate. Cool down, don't heat up.
What's the explanation, if any at all, in relation to the myth that babies get fevers when they are teething?
This debate continues to rage. I used to in the United States. I remember when this was raging, and there were actually articles speaking of a teething virus. Yeah. Well, in my experience, what happens is that teething means God wants you to have teeth. The tooth breaks through the gum. There's a hole. The mouth has a high concentration of bacteria normally, and so you get a bacteria shower through that hole, and the body responds with an elevated temperature for half a day or so. And so people have linked that to the teething caused that. So you have to explain, well, actually no, the teething caused the hole, the bacteria went in, and the body did what it had to do. But I remember the days of the teething virus debate in the United States. I haven't seen any recently.
Dr. Siheli, the myth that, or the alleged myth that chicken noodle soup cures everything. You know, you've heard quite often in relation to fevers and colds and so on that drink the chicken noodle soup. Good evening, caller. You're with us.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Is it a medical myth or is it fact that while you're pregnant you can have a period? Because I've heard that many times, and based on my understanding of the female reproductive system, I don't think that should be a period. It should be something else, not a period. So can you clarify that, please?
Yeah, I think the question relates to bleeding in pregnancy, and that is different to a period. A period is normally that term used when one is not pregnant. But you have many situations and circumstances when a lady becomes pregnant and there is some blood around the time of the expected menses, but that is just bleeding in pregnancy. Anything to add to that, Dr. Sealy?
You've explained it.
Yeah, so but
You should get that checked out.
Exactly, because
that is not expected.
it can be indicative of problems, complications of that pregnancy, especially depending on the quantity of blood that is seen. So it's important that you go to your gynecologist and get your examination, and sometimes even at the health centers, the community nurses who work and have the antenatal clinics, they can do an initial assessment and put some clarity to that particular situation. But definitely bleeding in pregnancy is referred to as just that, bleeding in pregnancy, and not called a period.
Okay, I thought as much. Thank you.
There have been a couple patients, not very common, who we found out who've been pregnant, and when they're dated by ultrasound, they're about 16 weeks. But they swear that they missed only one period. So you may have some breakthrough bleeding between. So you always ask, if you think you had a period, was it normal flow or less? And it's usually a little different, but people, so again,
in many
cases, some rare cases it happens.
Yeah, and in many such cases you would find that so-called bleeding pregnancy is significantly less in terms of quantity. And duration than the normal periods.
But if it occurs late in pregnancy, then it's a problem. You need to see a gynecologist as soon as possible.
Yep. All right, so the chicken noodle soup theory.
Who would have forgotten that it cures?
Because you've heard that around the place, and people swear that once they have the flu or the cold or whatever feverishness, chicken noodle soup is the...
You can rationalize it, the steam, the hot steam, you inhale it, it kind of moisturizes your nasal passage, and it kind of liquefies the mucus and allows it to flow, so it kind of helps in the hygiene and the toileting of it. And I mean, it may be the steam itself, not the chicken noodle soup itself, that caused that. That's why a lot of times they have a hot tea or hot beverage in the morning. Maybe it's not the tea or the coffee or so on, but it's the steam that kind of actually helps.
Tea that I got, and I really cannot add much to it. I don't know much about it, but it says here psychiatric and emergency room visits increase during the full moon. I know you would have heard on the street talk. I don't know if Pinocchio will put that on the street and find out if it happens on the street, but you would have heard on the street talk when the moon becomes full, some people start to act more strange.
Other cultures believe that, but I don't know how it's taken here. I mean, I've never heard that.
Any comments on that, Patrick? Yeah, there seems to be,
full moon means rain might be coming.
Okay.
I think we should do a study to see if around full moon there is a rush in our emergency rooms. I have stopped laughing. I think we need to check that one out.
So there may be some...
There's another which speaks to the fact that you lose most of your body heat through your head. So you find when, we always, even with babies born here in hot, warm, beautiful St. Kitts, and they carry the babies out at night and they cover their head, to prevent heat loss and other issues associated with the head's exposure.
Right, so it's 25% of our metabolism occurs in the brain. So that's maybe where that thinking came from. I don't think it matters much in our climate, but I guess in the cold climate, to try to prevent excessive heat loss, people would make sure you cover your head with a toque or a cap, something like that.
Yeah, well, we are actually winding down now. We have another 5 minutes, and what I want us to do in this 5 minutes, apart from giving you closing comments, we just want to remind the general public about the existence of the coronavirus situation and all of the precautions that need to be continually remembered and practiced in relation to things like the hand washing, sanitization, distancing, and so on. And at the same time, any comments based upon the suggestion from the caller in relation to the vaccine, the impending vaccine or vaccines that may appear on the market as a means of tackling the coronavirus. Any comments?
There are over 70 or 80 trials going on right now with regards to finding the best vaccine that is safe and effective. And the jury is still out. Hopefully, we will have access to the evidence, and then we'll be able to decide at that point in time whether it would benefit us or not. For me, the jury is still out. We just have to wait and see.
My comment is that we have advantages. We have a lot of things going for us as we face this pandemic. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. That's a quote from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Yes, there are persons who are more at risk, but in our tropical environment, we have the fresh food, we have the clean air, we have the sunshine, we have the sea breeze, we have the green spaces for exercise. These are our advantages, and we all must take advantage of them. I'm happy to see, I'm seeing more and more persons exercising, which is very, very good. In terms of the vaccine, initially I was hopeful we'll get something on the world market by January, December maybe, but that is not looking like that. So psychologically, I think we have to prepare ourselves to go through January to June 2021 before a vaccine, a safe and effective vaccine becomes available to the world. In the meantime, we have the hygiene, the hygiene practices: cover your cough, cover your sneeze, wash your hands, keep your hands away from your face. Those are standard for any respiratory virus. The wearing of a facial cover where two or more are gathered, and physical distancing is not possible. You wear a mask. No need to wear a mask if you're walking about by yourself, you're in a vehicle by yourself, jogging, no need to wear a mask. It's where two or more are gathered and physical distancing is not possible. Also, if you're going into an interior space that is air conditioned. So the other point I wish to bring up is that it is very clear from World Health data that countries in Southeast Asia and Africa are faring much better than the rest of the world. And unfortunately, I say this, unfortunately our television is US dominated, and yes, persons are being affected by that.
Well, we have our last minute, which I'm going to give a yes or no answer option to you both with the final of the myths. Dr. C. Haley,
yes, sir.
Do only athletes get athlete's foot?
No.
And Dr. Martin, is it a myth that if a pregnant woman wants her child to be fair, that she just has to drink lots of Marby?
F-E-A-R?
F-A-I-R. Myth. Well, we want to say thank you very much to our listening and viewing audience tonight. We had our program, Medical Myths, presented with my colleagues, Dr. Patrick Martin, pediatrician, and Dr. Bishara Siheli, internal medicine specialist. Thanks for viewing, and we will certainly be with you again in the following Monday with another program from the St. Kitts and Nevis Medical and Dental Association. Have a pleasant evening.